Welcome back to TwinSpires Sports NFL Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson alongside Scott Shapiro and James Scully, here to talk the latest NFL headlines and look ahead to the upcoming divisional round of the playoffs set for kickoff on Saturday. Now, last week, James and Scott both predicted a 49ers upset of the Cowboys. That came to fruition, but over in the AFC, the 3-6 matchup played out a little bit differently. The Buffalo Bills absolutely demolished the New England Patriots. My team, I'm a little bit still in shock from that. And now the Bills are a plus 500 choice to win the Super Bowl. Do you think bettors should be jumping on those odds right now? Let's start with you, Scott.
I do not, Ashley. I give the Bills probably as good of a chance as most any teams, but not a better one. And they have 2 road games likely, unless the Bengals upset the Titans and they pull the slight upset against the Chiefs. Then they have to beat the NFC team. So while I understand the excitement after that Bills dominant performance, and man, were they awesome in that game against New England, I don't really see much value in that at this point in time, having to likely pull 2 road wins, in my opinion at least, and then win the Super Bowl. I think there's teams that provide better value.
What do you think, James?
Well, I like Green Bay to win the Super Bowl this year, Ashley, so I'm not going to be all in with Buffalo, but I've got a different opinion from Scott. I do think the Bills are going to make the Super Bowl, and it's really 3 reasons. One is Josh Allen. He's just in career best form. He's really elevated his play in recent weeks. He's going to be difficult to stop by any of the AFC teams. Secondly, is their defense. Their defense is playing really well now, and they're built to stop Kansas City. I mean, they beat them by 18 in the regular season. They've been preparing for this matchup for years. I think it's a good matchup for Buffalo. And third, and perhaps most important, is their offensive line. Buffalo was really inconsistent during the regular season, and their offensive line played a big part. There were about 3 games in November where they didn't even rush for 100 yards collectively. But since playing at Tampa Bay in mid-December, they've become a completely different unit. I mean, they're the best offensive line in the AFC. They rushed for 174 on New England on Saturday night. It could have been a lot more if they'd been focused on the run. And I think they're going to have success on both the ground and in the air against both Kansas City and then even Tennessee if they play them in the next round.
Saw a little reaction from Scott there. Best offensive line in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, they have been playing better, to James's point. I don't know if I'd call them the best offensive line in the AFC. Like I said, nothing would surprise me in terms of Buffalo making a run here. I just don't think the value's there. I think there's several teams like them that have at least an equal chance, if not better than Buffalo, to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree. I just was shocked to see. I mean, okay, it was a Bill Belichick defense that they set a playoff record against, and I still can't believe what I saw, but I just don't think the Bills are going to come out with the same kind of performance. This is a rematch from week 5 with the Chiefs, and the Chiefs were in a slump back then. I think they're going to come together with way more firepower. They had a huge game against the Steelers, who have a pretty good defense as well. So I actually think the Chiefs can win this outright, and I'm going to lean that way.
Just to add one more thing on that, I do think that the Bills they did win the turnover margin 4-0 that day. Josh Allen hasn't gone 2 games this year without throwing an interception. He didn't do so in New England. So expecting them to win the turnover margin like they did in that first contest, I think is wishful thinking and maybe to their detriment in the end.
And just to add one more thing, I thought Josh Allen had time to eat a sandwich, check his email, and then go through 4 or 5 progressions on Saturday night. If he gets that kind of time in the pocket, he will destroy any defense.
All right. So it sounds like you all might be taking the 3 over the 2 in this matchup. But looking ahead to the other matchups in the divisional round, which underdog do you think has the best chance to win this weekend? Let's start with James.
Well, I don't think Buffalo beating Kansas City is an upset. They are an underdog. I expect them to win. But I'm going to mention the Rams. And I just think the Rams have really, their offense is rolling right now. And their defense presents some trouble, I think, for Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, Tristan Wirfs is dealing with a sprained ankle. His status is a little bit questionable. And Philly was able to put a lot of pressure on Tom Brady, I thought, on Sunday afternoon. And I think the Rams are going to present a trouble up front on defense, and they're going to just outscore Tampa. So I think the Rams are going to win, and I'll go with them as my answer.
Scott?
Well, I think it's going to be a formful AFC bracket with both Tennessee and Kansas City finding ways to win home victories. I was between the Rams and Niners, so I'll go with the Niners since James went with the Rams. And, I've been a fan of this Niners team for some time. I know James has as well. And it's going to be a tall task to go into Green Bay and beat the Packers on extended rest while the Niners have had to battle in must-win games over the last couple of weeks. But I do think they have the recipe if Nick Bosa and Fred Warner are both healthy to put pressure on Rodgers with their front four and do a little better job of covering Devontae Adams and crew than most teams are able to do so. Plus their offensive attack, the ability to run the ball against Green Bay will certainly shorten the game. I think there's a lot of different scenarios that could play out in that game, especially with the injuries to the Niners defense. But I do think they have a significant chance if they can stay in the game to win it in the end.
And I'll just add one thing on the Niners. My real concern is Jimmy Garoppolo. I think you get good Jimmy, bad Jimmy every single game. Bad Jimmy almost cost them that game. They had no business, Dallas did, having a chance to win. It was all because of the quarterback. He's going to be under more pressure to make plays against Green Bay. I think you're going to get the bad Jimmy will ultimately doom the 49ers on Sunday or Saturday.
Very fair point. Scary.
Well, Garoppolo is good for an interception or two every game, it seems like. But I also want to mention that Elijah Mitchell was not in that matchup in the regular season. He'll be back this time around. I think that could be a game changer. And we didn't see the Deebo Samuel that we now see, the wide receiver running back combination. And defenses have not been good at stopping him. So that could totally change the dynamic for the 49ers this weekend. But let's talk about the 49ers matchup with the Cowboys loss. Mike McCarthy's job could be on the line. We don't know for sure what's going to happen there, but let me just refer to my notes because this is quite the long list. We've got the Bears, Broncos, Dolphins, Giants, Jaguars, Raiders, Texans, and Vikings all have head coaching vacancies at the moment. In your opinion, which job is most attractive, Scott?
I think the Broncos is, and maybe I'm being a little biased here. I thought the Broncos were set for a pretty good season this year, but they didn't get the quarterback play they needed, and not a great coaching job by Vic Fangio and his offensive coordinator, Pat Shurmur. If they can bring in a quarterback, I think they have a playoff roster, maybe even one worthy of contending with Kansas City and the Chargers in that AFC West. They've got a very strong defense. They added Patrick Surtain to their secondary. They've got Bradley Chubb, and I think they've got skill position players and an offensive line that are good enough to make for a competitive offense. So assuming they get a quarterback replacement, I think the Broncos, which I think they will, is a very, very friendly landing spot for a new head coach.
I think everything Scott said, it makes sense. I mean, it's true, but that if they get a quarterback, it's just like too big of an if in my book. Quarterback is by far the most important position in football. Zach Taylor is an absolute anomaly nowadays. He's the exception to the rule. He lost 25 games his first 2 years and kept his job. These coaches don't have that much runway to lose games. And if they don't have a quarterback, they're in trouble. That makes Jacksonville and Chicago the two most appealing jobs in my eyes because they have Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, and I think both guys are going to be good.
What do you think about the Vikings? I mean, Kirk Cousins isn't quite that upper echelon type of quarterback, but they've got Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, even Alexander Madison is a great running back to have in the backfield. I personally would want to go to the Vikings. I mean, they kept Mike Zimmer around for a while. I think that if you go there, you at least feel good about job security for a couple of seasons.
They have the right culture. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead. I
think they have the right culture in Minnesota. I'll give Ashley that. I do think that Kirk Cousins, though, they may part ways with him in the offseason. I think they have it's a softer salary cap hit. And if they do that, they'll be in the same market as these other teams that are looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, they've got some real stars. I think Justin Jefferson's a future Hall of Famer. Dalvin Cook, when he stays healthy, is definitely one of the best running backs in the league, but there's a lot of holes there. James mentioned the potential of Cousins leaving. It could be more of a rebuilding spot than it might appear at first on paper. I don't greatly disagree with the take, but I think Mike Zimmer is a pretty good NFL coach and got a lot out of that roster.
Well, let's say Mike McCarthy does get fired. How enviable is that position in Dallas? Would you want to go there and work with Jerry Jones over your shoulder? What do you think, James?
Absolutely. I think that is a very enviable job. They have a quarterback. I don't know if they may fire Mike McCarthy while we're filming this. I think they're going to have an announcement today. But if they don't fire him and bring him back, I think it would be a mistake. Dallas led the league in penalties this year. They were also the highest scoring team. I mean, they could get away with 14 penalties on Sunday if they scored 31 points or reached their average. They only scored 17. They deserved to lose. And I think the thing is that Dan Quinn, who's taken the Falcons to the Super Bowl, has brought a stability to that defense. That's been their biggest weakness for years. I think he's gone if they keep McCarthy. I would fire McCarthy, hire Quinn, because that offense is in great shape for years to come potentially.
It remains to be seen, in my opinion, if Dak Prescott will ever be good enough to win the Super Bowl, but he's definitely puts them in a better position than most of the other open seats in terms of NFL teams looking for a head coach. Mike McCarthy's just a god-awful football coach. I mean, there was the call at the end of that game, which was questionable just throughout. Penalties, no flow, no real game plan. He's continuously shown he's not capable. I think Dallas should fire him, and I do agree that would put them towards the top of the list, if not top, in terms of vacancies.
Well, while we're on the Cowboys, of course, everyone's talking about the final play that ended the Cowboys season. How much blame do you place on the officials? How much blame do you place on Dallas for the way that game ended? Scott?
I blame it all on the Cowboys, expecting the referees to make some sort of athletic play, to spot that ball and save them 1 second is wishful thinking. It could have happened, but as a head coach and a coaching staff and the players in that league that at 14 seconds or less, you're probably not going to get a playoff. You're counting on a lot of things. They should have either thrown the ball look to throw the ball and got themselves one more play, taken 2 shots at a Hail Mary. Or if they want to run that draw with Dak Prescott, just stop 4 or 5 yards early, give himself up, and then do a much better job of getting his team settled and getting the ball to the umpire to spot it. There were many mistakes made by the Cowboys there. Blaming the refs for that is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with Scott. I mean, if you are going to run like that, you've got to stop at least 5, maybe 10 yards sooner. That would have put you in range. But still, I'd rather throw 2 Hail Marys to the end zone rather than risk none. And that's what they got. I didn't like that call at all. And for one thing is for certain, they said they'd been practicing it, but any team that practices that play, the quarterback knows to hand the ball to the referee. Dak Prescott didn't do it. Once again, I think the coaching, they're not well coached on the little things and by Mike McCarthy. And that ultimately was Dallas's mistake.
Yeah, no disagreement here. Cowboys kind of shot themselves in the foot. 7 points through 3 quarters, inexcusable for the number 1 offense in the league. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thanks again, James and Scott, for joining me. Be sure to check us out next week when we look ahead to the conference championship round, and head to TwinSpires Sportsbook for the latest odds on the NFL playoffs and look for some pretty excellent promos to get you ready for the postseason as well. We'll see you next week.